Hey Neo fam, happy weekend to you. It's the weekend of October, and I'll just give the date that I'm uploading and that I'm going to release this video. It's going to be Sunday, October 19th. It'll be in the morning here in the US when I release this video. I wanted to wait and get the trade data from Friday, October 17th, including after hours before I did the video. I was also waiting on some other data. So with this, I already know this is going to be a longer video. I've got a lot to talk about. We'll start with short-term stock price action and then kind of move out and look at bigger picture things as we sort of move through the video. But I will create timestamps or chapters to make it more convenient and easier for you in case you don't want to watch all the way through, so you can pick and choose or jump around at your convenience. So first off, at the bottom of the screen, I've kept it on the screen for most of my videos for quite a while now. And I'm going to continue to keep it there until I'm confident that we are going to see more of an uptrend and a clear uptrend without fear of NIO stock coming back down with the volatility that we've seen over the last couple of years. So with that in mind, the NIO stock, these are the three short-term stock price indicators that I've been tracking for a couple of years now. And this is why I have them at the bottom. I think they are the most important with respect to watching and tracking short-term stock price action. So let's talk about it. Trade volume is the first one. If we look at the top here, you'll see on Friday, October 17th, 2025, there were fewer than 70 million shares traded. Anything less than 100 million shares for volume for NIO, to me, is considered sort of that 100 million share trade volume on the daily side of things tends to be like a bigger number in my mind. And when we've seen NIO with more of those days over the course of months, we see the stock price generally go up and go up sometimes a lot. But with fewer of those 100 million share trade volume days, what we see is NIO stock perhaps being more easily manipulated or taken down or controlled with suppression of stock price. And we'll talk more about that as we move on. But on the right-hand side, this is just part of the trade day data for NIO on October 17th. That was a Friday. And there were some compelling things, but the price action actually didn't surprise me. And I'll explain why in just a minute. On the left-hand side, did want to start with, this is about 2 months of data here. So this is on the right-hand side, you've got Friday, October 17th. That's that day. Over here, we're talking about the August sort of 15th, 16th. It's about 2 months here. This is the 14th. This is the 19th. So we're about 2 months out just in this data. But if we go out a little further, and by the way, this is the dilution point. So when NIO came down a little bit further recently, but if we go out even just a little bit further to, let's say, early July, you see, the stock price has clearly been moving up, a nice uptrend. And so I really am not worried about what we've seen over this last week, especially once I share some of the things that I'll get to here in just a minute. So that's the trade volume. We have not had a lot of the 100 million share trade volume days recently. This is the FTD data. And the most recent data we got is right here. The white lines represent the FTDs. And in this case, this is the 1.5 million level. So on 5 of 6 trade days in a row, there were over 1.5 million shares that couldn't be located. So this could have represented manipulation or some suppression of a stock price. And if you look back and note that if we go back to, let's say, March, this is about early to now late March, you've got a lot of the FTDs coming in. And this is when NIO stock was trading just in about the $5 range. So even with lower trade volume and elevated FTDs, this, by the way, is lagged delayed data. So for example, this only goes through September 29th. But if we come back to what we've actually seen with the stock price, even with the elevated FTD data and with lower trade volume, the stock price still has been moving up and moving up nicely, especially if there is a possibility that manipulation has been going on. So I also want to talk about this as it perhaps relates, but I also think there's maybe a positive here nestled into the data. If you'll note this off exchange number, this is from Friday, October 17th, 2025, over 61% of the day's trade volume was off exchange or in dark pools. In other words, it was probably big money. And I'm actually thinking, if I bring you down here a little bit further and we look back over about the last 1 month of data, if you'll note the off exchange, we've got a lot of days with over 50 and even 60% off exchange, meaning the majority of trading over the last month has gone off exchange or in dark pools. If big money is doing this much, And even if market makers like the suspicious one I've talked about wanting to control or suppress stock price are doing that some of the time in these dark pools and off exchange, I still think it's maybe likely, at least possible, but perhaps likely that we've got big money buying NIO as well. And so that'll be something we'll have to track in the upcoming months. But this was also very noteworthy, especially with respect to Friday, October 17th, when I noticed the calls that were out of the money. This is a very large number of calls outside of the money with max pain at $7. It really didn't surprise me that we saw the stock price brought down below the $7 level, with all of these probably contributing to some profit for someone, perhaps a market maker, also a suspicious short with a short position or put position with NIO. I'm just saying this stuff is kind of interesting when I see it. So I like to highlight it and point it out every once in a while. Also, let's talk about, because now we've covered the FTDs and the trade volume at the bottom of the screen. The sentiment is the third one, and this is on the retail side. This is a simple take, but it's the subreddits. This is the NIO mentions. And at first you say, well, these look like they're, it's a decent number, but here's what's interesting. If we go back and I show you, let's say we go back to when NIO went to its all-time high, you see that we really don't have that much positive sentiment compared to what was going on back here. It has really stayed very quiet. And this is just on the retail side. So interesting to note, especially if perhaps big money is buying in here. And we haven't seen retail fully, shift sentiment wise. But I also think even on the side of the big money, Wall Street institutions, I think my take, and again, I'm referencing back when we saw the all-time high for NIO before, what we saw back then was the analysts with their price predictions, they were trailing the stock price up. And I think we'll see something, more likely to look like that did. In other words, the NIO stock price will get out ahead of the price targets, and then they'll be trailing it up. I think that will maybe be a better indicator for the full sentiment shift, which I think is a ways away. But that means perhaps we've got a lot of upside here coming for NIO. And that aligns nicely with profitability, which I don't even know if I'll talk about that in this video. There's just a lot more to cover. So let's talk about September, the numbers. And this is just the battery electric vehicle brands in China. And you've got a couple things to note here. Firefly not making it because they've Thinker Car has chosen to share Onvo and NIO and Firefly all separately. So obviously, if they were all under the NIO group, it would be ranking higher, but still NIO and Onvo both in the top 20. And that's just for September, with NIO not yet at a point where they have been able to fully catch up with the demand on either the newer releases of the NIO ES8 or the Onvo L90. So I think things are looking really positive as NIO really is just trying to catch up on the demand and meet the demand with production and deliveries. So how about across all passenger vehicle brands in the month of September? Well, what's interesting, and I like doing this comparison, I like looking at the BEVs, just the green, which we saw here, all the battery electric vehicles represented in green, but then doing this comparison so that you can see that there's still a lot of market yet to shift over, because the blue represents gas or ICE sales. In the future in China, there will be none of those. So the orange are sort of your hybrids, like your EREVs, extended range EVs, or your plug-in hybrids. But essentially, I think of them as hybrids, so not true battery electric vehicles. So I just see all this blue, and I'm thinking there's still a lot of market share to go, and NIO can take a lot of it. I'm curious if we're going to see more of these special editions from NIO. So I wanted to highlight it. It looks like when they do these, they're looking to target about a 500 or 600 number. They've done it a couple times. Certainly, we've seen it certainly with Firefly, I know. So I wanted to point that out along with some of this other data. This is year to date. So as of September 2025, and this is maybe a bit, I don't want to say misleading, but to suggest that NIO's sliding, but to not recognize that the refresh for the ES8, for example, just came in for NIO. And even some of the cadence with the vehicles and the refresh for some of the other vehicles for the NIO brand was later than it has been in other years. So, I think let's wait and see what it looks like at the end of the year. But in the meantime, we've got Onvo and NIO both placing in the top 20 year to date in the BEV brand side of things. And so again, I like doing the comparison. This is just the individual models, but I wanted to share this because I think next year there's an excellent chance we could see the NIO ES8 and the Onvo L90 making this list. And I also wanted to point out or reference just how many blue or gas or ICE sales are still, across the Chinese market. It's just, I still think we've got a pivot point and a shift that needs to take place. I'm hoping that NIO will be a leader with the battery swappable models across all three brands, really kind of leading the way into 2026. But this is the, let me see if I have it. Yeah, okay. This is the, just within China, I believe. And so this is, again, once we do the comparison, I'm actually going to jump back here so that you can see just the BEVs. And then if we come back to this and look at, once again, this recurring theme of the blue, especially for the NIO brand, they're looking to take market share from Audi, BMW, Mercedes. Each of those, it looks like between the three of them, they're averaging about 400,000 sales year to date. And the majority of them, the heavy majority of them, in fact, gas or ICE sales. So not only is there quite a big shift that can still take place in the higher price range to BEVs in China, but NIO is outselling all three of those brands combined if we're only talking BEVs. So, it's just a nod to their positioning. I think they're well positioned. And I believe that this is including the export sales. So we saw BYD go up, we saw Tesla go up. But again, I think it's just noteworthy. There's just so much blue, so many gas sales, ICE sales across China in the future. They're not going to be there. And so, once again, here, this a nod and a reference to that very thing where we're seeing those brands that have done so well in China slowing a little bit, but we still have a lot of BEV market share and penetration to go for different brands. So NIO doesn't have to dominate, but there's a lot of market share they can still take. So I just like keeping that in mind, big picture thinking. This is long term, and that's kind of always been my take. So I wanted to mention this as well. I like this kind of breakdown of the 100,000th Onvo. And this was before they had actually delivered it. So I've got these queued up, and let's talk about this briefly because this was 100,000 of the Onvo, just the Onvo brand. This is the actual delivery of the 100,000th. And so what that means, if we look back at the September delivery numbers shared October 1st, the Onvo brand had delivered just over 90,000. So it sounds to me like NIO has done about, approximately 10,000 Onvos in this month of October so far. And we'll get updated insurance registration data this next week. I did a video and I'll link it in case you haven't seen it from the most recent data that we had from ThinkerCar. I kind of like sticking with the ThinkerCar presentation, so that's why I didn't do one this week. Anyway, this is, again, a nod to big picture in the positioning, in the brand recognition, the three long-term or big picture sort of major growth phases as I identified them several years ago for NIO. The first one is brand awareness, market awareness. The market has to know about NIO. And as I've shared here just recently, the German brands have done so well. BMW, Audi, Mercedes have done so well. And so it's important for NIO to get out there and get the word of mouth and become known across the country. Within the last year, William Li was talking about in an earnings about how about half of the NIO sales were coming from just one small geographic area in China, meaning there's a lot of market share they can still take. So let's see what happens. Also, we've got positive things like this happening, NIO with the battery as a service and the optionality, the flexibility, and yes, eventually the profitability that's going to come from the battery swap stations and from the partnerships and all of these things. It's going to be fun to track it. And I don't know at what point we see, this major shift. I don't know if it will align with the profitability target of Q4 that William Li has talked about, or if we're going to have to wait and see it maybe in 2026. But we've also got another reference to the, I think the first one they're going to do is around Christmas. And I don't know how much we'll see as far as if it's only going to be for NIO users at first and the three NIO brands, or if they're going to be working with other brands, and it's been a little quiet on the CATL choco swap side of things. And so I'm not sure what all that looks like. The other brands that we're talking about doing battery swappable models, I'm not sure if we have all of that. Safety is huge, not just for the autonomous driving, but also with respect to just how well NIO has made all of their brands and their vehicles. And if you watch to the end of this, and maybe it'll actually show it here, the other vehicle, I mean, the safety factor is legit to go along with the premium branding that NIO has. And that's the most affordable sub-brand that they have, Firefly, incredibly safe. Once again, we've got William Lee talking about, the importance of, and again, it's a nod to the safety, because insurance costs are going to be lower if, for one, you don't have to worry about the battery dying because you've got the option of, swap it out. And so the shell, of the vehicle is going to maintain its value over longer term. That's going to reflect or be reflected by lower insurance costs. A safer vehicle is also going to be indicative and reflective of that. And then with all of the additional safety measures that NIO has within their autonomous driving, I just think, once again, I'm going to say it, I'm a broken record, I think they're so well positioned. And now let's talk briefly about this, because this is a bit of a old news, recycled is that's the way I'm looking at it. And so it was really interesting to see this happen, during the week, and then to see really NIO stock kind of rebound so fast. But again, perhaps that's just a nod to what I was referencing. And maybe we just got a lot of big money that is, slowly buying back in or buying into NIO at this point. It's going to be interesting to find out. This is the old reference to NIO responding to that short seller report that was referenced in this whole, I just call it a bunch of noise. But in case you're curious and want to look into it, you're welcome to. I'll link it all in the video along with the chapters or timestamps. I knew this would be a longer video, but I also had taken a few days away from doing a video. So I wanted to, put together what I could. And there's certainly, because I had so many things queued up and talked about so much stuff, I actually had probably twice as many that I could have included, but I didn't want to go too far, too long. And I figured, you know what, I can always come back with another longer one. I'm also debating about doing a bit of a pilot run with channel memberships and deep dive videos, including things not just NIO, but other stuff. Also, I may do live streams there. And kind of my thinking with that is maybe like a $19.99 price point. It'll only be for channel members. And then channel members, probably what I'd like to do is basically 4 pieces of content a month, including perhaps a combination of live streams and longer videos with more of the research and stuff that I don't talk about and won't talk about on the NIO Trending channel publicly on YouTube. So that's kind of my thinking. And one of the things I'm not sure about is, for example, with people across the world in so many different time zones, if the folks who become channel members want to do live streams, I'm fine with that, but I will want to make it convenient or in a format such that, we can get as many people on there as possible. So I don't want to leave people out if they're in a different time zone than, when it's convenient for those of us who are interested to jump on together. So anyway, some of my thoughts, I wanted to share them since, again, already a longer video, but drop it in the comments. Let me know your thoughts about any of this. Thanks for sticking around to the end, because I know some of you did. Have a great weekend. I'll see y'all again very soon.